Do you think this is doing something to the way people communicate?
I do think that the world is becoming less brutal and ignorant in many ways. For example, you'd find if we went back even 100 years, but let's say 130 years, you would find a large portion of the globe that could have a conversation with you on why slavery is necessary and can be virtuous in certain circumstances for certain people. And you'd have no problem finding maybe half the globe who would have a serious conversation with you justifying a form of slavery. Today, in 2017, you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who could morally or ethically justify the idea that you should own a slave.
In North America.
Right, but
no, in the world.
Also, it's economically not viable anymore. See, like if you could do something like Foxconn and have a bunch of people stocked up inside some place and feed them and house them, and they work 16 hours a day and jump off the building so much you have to put nets around.
Yeah.
What is the difference? The only difference is they can leave. It's like they can leave if they want to, but it's some weird kind of form of slavery.
Well, there's always going to be indentured servitude or whatever it is, depending on the economy. What I'm saying is that you would have, for example, the minute you said to
I know
people,
exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying.
And that's progress to an extent where the concept,
But isn't it bizarre? I mean, like what we're talking about, though, like you get something from Japan or China rather, and you know that it came from one of those kind of factories, and you're okay with it. I mean, we're all okay with it. We have to be if you want a new iPhone. Right?
Well, if you want any phone, even Droids, Android, everything.
Samsung, I don't know how they make this shit.
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
No, I'm okay with it.
I don't know.
I'm okay with it for the following reason. We went through our own industrial revolution, and the fact of the matter is that when economies are growing, and you can a lot of examples of this. Look at Korea 30 years ago. Look at China 20 years ago. Look at all these countries who have gained great prosperity and higher standards of living for massive sections of their population. They all started that way. They all started, it's very difficult to grow your country to become an industrial powerhouse.
No, I totally understand that, Brian, but it's just weird that we allow people to pay people. Like, essentially, it's not a company in China or, it's like kind of an American company in a lot of ways.
It's a form of slavery.
Yeah, it's a loophole in slavery.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's way cheaper to have like an involuntary slavery network than it is because then if you make it involuntary, like instead of forced slavery, you're paying them so little that they can never leave.
Yes.
You're just basically, instead of providing food for them, you're just basically giving them the money that you would spend if it was real slavery. Yep. You'd have to buy their food and shit, and then you'd have to have guards, and you have to pay guards and have the security system.
Well, they feed them there too. I mean, it's real creepy.
Yeah, it's a loophole.
It's you got to realize that, like, even whoever owns the company, whether it's Chinese people, the American people, the American companies have these big deals with them for a reason.
Yes,
because they can take advantage of those loopholes.
And
that's why they do it.
I think
because their manufacturing tolerances are super high. They really know how to do.
But
shit
there is a lot of pressure from responsible corporate American companies, and they go into those. They go in there because their shareholders find out about this stuff, and they go in there. And by the way, I would imagine that a lot of people that work at Apple is going to sound really surprising, and these other companies are pretty ethical and moral and don't. And I'm very familiar with not feeling good about the fact their company might have a relationship with a Chinese affiliate who doesn't treat their workers well. And in fact, a lot of these corporations like Apple were very, very, and IBM, for example, were instrumental in going in there and saying, hold it. We're not doing business this way. Your environmental practices, I mean, there was a whole article about how IBM, if you do business with IBM, good luck, because your vendors better be environmentally responsible. IBM has these environmental standards that are just draconian almost for a lot of companies, where it's like, you may be environmentally responsible and you work for us and we're a big client for you, but how about the people that work for you?
How's that draconian, though?
Well, it's not draconian. I'm saying that a lot of these corporations have to be responsible for their shareholders. Yeah.
Smart in a lot of ways.
And it's smart, and they go, I don't want to do business where people are indentured.
No, you're definitely right.
Yeah. You got to say that.
But it's also 100% fact.
I believe them.
It's
but
also,
they are.
But hold on. It's still, no matter what you just said that made it look cute, there's still 100% fact. Those people make almost nothing.
Yes.
And that's how you get your laptop made.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to break it
It's
down
the only
reality.
way. It's the only way.
It's
you can
just
do. You
cheaper.
can say
It's
whatever
cheaper.
you want, but it's the only way.
Do you
to get
think
shit
though?
done.
Do you
Is it, though?
think that is it possible that this can turn back around and they can start? I mean, the idea of American manufacturing is like a thing. Things that have been kicked around back and forth since. You know, I mean, this whole campaign got started essentially, right? What was a big part of what Trump getting into office was bringing back American manufacturing.
America great again.
We all know the story of Detroit. We have all seen like how they're. Oh, there's another fucking documentary that they're doing about this guy who's building a farm in Detroit, the largest farm. They're making a huge farm in the middle of Detroit. They're like knocking down all these buildings, buying up all this land. And they're just going to build an urban farm.
But what were you going to ask, though? What was the question about?
Is it realistic
about
to bring all
bringing
the jobs?
manufacturing jobs back?
Yeah, I mean, doing
Trump
like
thinks
this,
so.
the idea of it, the idea of like reigniting the manufacturing base of the United States and having everything being American made being a big thing. But
So
when it
here's the
comes to
problem
like
with that.
electronics and things like that, is it even possible?
So here's the problem. Is, first of all, the reason that we don't pay crazy amounts, the reason that the consumers get to pay not a lot of money for a flat screen TV or whatever it might be, the reason prices seem to come down. You can go to Walmart and buy a lot of shit for not as much money. There's efficiency, right? And there's a price for efficiency, of course. But for the most part, if you look at the infrastructure that over 20 years China has built with those factories that are so incredibly efficient and clean and have just locked into exactly how to churn out as much product. And you're a company, and your bottom line is you're responsible, for example, if you're a public company, you're responsible to your shareholders to make them as much money, as many dividends as you can. And on top of that, turn a profit. You're going to make your product for as little money as possible. And by the way, it's also going to allow you to bring the price down so your consumers can buy
Of course.
it. And all that. So what I'm saying,
Of course.
what I'm saying is that
We
with
all know
that,
this.
with that infrastructure, I am good luck with the American manufacturing sector trying to compete with the Chinese who have a 20-year head start, and I think that's a fantasy. Not only is bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. is a fantasy, but more importantly, we're not even using human beings more and more.
Good,
the
right,
real
Bean?
enemy to unemployment is automation. It's not just the 400 million Chinese workers that showed up over the past 20 years. It's automation.
Foxconn CEO says investment for display plant in U.S. would exceed $7 billion.
A lot of money.
Pretty amazing.
So they have these plants that are already set up in China, very high standards for tolerances for their manufacturing, for not just this, but also for clothes,
for everything.
And all sorts of things
Brian,
are made.
we just had a meeting with this company, and they were saying how they went to an American factory because they're looking to outsource like shoes, T-shirts, all this stuff. They went to an American factory, and then they went to in China. He goes, it's not China's like the Bentley or Rolls Royce of factories. The one they went to America that produces a lot of our American shit, he said it was awful.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't even put up with it. The standards aren't even close.
You wouldn't do business
Also,
there.
the people that are jumping out of buildings, is that a clean place or a dirty place?
Super clean. Once they jump, it's clean because they have to
jump
clean
out of
up.
a clean building, Eddie.
Yeah,
They
it's
jump
like,
out of a
come
clean
on.
building.
I mean, I know it seems like a fantasy, but doesn't it sound like we should try?
Yeah.
Oh, it'll
We
never
are-
happen. It'll never happen.
no,
It's like,
we are
fuck
trying.
China. Fuck China. Let's bring the jobs back here. We got to at least try. At least give Trump a shot.
We
Let's
are
see.
we are trying, but even Trump realizes, and everybody realizes that there are some countries that do things more efficiently, right? So, for example, just
get
as
it.
a bad example, bananas are easier to grow in the Dominican Republic than they would because of the climate and all that than they would be in Detroit, right? Just because of the weather and stuff. So that's kind of the idea behind a global economy, the idea that certain companies do it, certain countries have the infrastructure, have the cheaper labor, and it's easier to churn out more product, thereby...
Yeah, but you keep saying cheaper labor like it's no big deal.
I'm not saying it's no big deal.
But it
Didn't we
is.
just talk about slave labor this whole time?
Yeah.
It also
and
makes
then
those countries wealthier.
How do you defend it?
And it raises their standard of living.
Sorta, yeah, but
Not sorta,
does it?
not
no,
sorta.
Brian, settle the fuck down. It does, but it does in a way where you're doing it off the back of the people that are making $5 a week.
Of course.
Okay, but that's what we keep saying, and you keep glossing over it.
That's
not
a form of
glossing over it.
slavery.
When I'm trying to explain like why it's a problem to a lot of people that listen to this, you want to gloss over it and Fox News it up.
Sir, I don't listen to Fox News. By the
You
way, let's
do
get a
so.
couple
Son
things
of a
straight.
bitch.
Hey,
He
you
does.
fuckers.
Look at him.
I don't get my news off of CNN or Fox News. Guess who doesn't read? Watch. I never
Washington
watch
Post.
news.
It's all
I don't
Washington
watch
Post.
news, you fuckers.
Where do you get your news? YouTube?
I read.
just does coke
I
and starts
read different
talking.
publications. conversations, and I do a lot of blow.
A lot of blow.
I do a lot of blow. I'm not glossing over anything. All I'm trying to say is this, really simply.
But you keep saying it. We
no,
know what you're saying.
not listening. What I'm saying is that
definitely listening.
I understand that
they got slavery down. They got slavery down.
If you go over it one more time, I'm going to freak out myself.
Brian, you're being very repetitive. That's why
I'm saying the
interrupted
standard
you.
of living in those countries has raised
Of course.
exponentially
And
because
we just
of
said that.
foreign
It's
investment.
done off
of
the
slavery.
back of these people that are making
It's still
$5
slave
a week.
labor. It's still
It's still same
slavery.
thing.
It's not
They're
slave
jumping
labor.
out of buildings, Brian. We got to.
Brian,
You're using
we
bad
can't be
examples.
cool with
Brian,
that.
it's illegal to make those people work like that in the United States for a fucking reason. And they're human beings. So if they're human beings in China and they're working in these horrendous conditions under
not.
insane hours,
Right.
they are, Brian. They
Some
live
are.
there.
You're
they
right.
live in these factories.
You're right. Some factories, you're 100% right. I would
And
never want to
in
work
some
that way.
factories, it's just a disco. They go in, they give them a drink, everybody gets a foot
No,
massage.
I'm not
$8 an hour
apologizing.
is a
I'm not,
velvet
plus
rope.
I'm
you
not
get through it when
saying
you work there.
I'm not
all
saying,
good.
guys. I'm not saying that
You're
it's
so
not.
Fox News.
I am
Your
not
dad is coming out of your mouth as you're sitting here.
I don't listen to Fox
Hey.
News. I'm not
I'm with
saying.
you, Count. I have nothing against slavery.
No,
with
I'm not
you.
saying that I believe in slave labor
long as
or
they're
that,
not white.
that it's not hard work. I'm
iPhone.
just saying that every
they're a bunch
country
of-
has industrialized the same way. That's all.
If they were a bunch of, that factory was filled with a bunch of hot women from Norway that were sweaty all the time, their breasts were hanging out, we'd be fucking trying to save them. We can't make them work these hours. We just can't do it. But because it's Chinese people, Brian's like, the economy, it's really doing
no,
great.
I'm not.
They
You
like
fucker.
it.
slaves.
They
No, I'm
like
not.
Under the
it.
backs
No,
of
I'm
these
not.
slaves.
The
This economy is
Chinese-
growing.
The
The
Chinese are
suicide
demanding
nets are
higher.
lovely.
The Chinese are demanding higher wages, so they're
Dude,
exporting their jobs
At
to
the
other countries.
end of the week, they can buy a Subway sandwich foot long.
Maybe.
Fuck off.
Maybe.
I am not saying
At the
anything
end of the
like
week,
that.
no
Stop
soda.
mischaracterizing
No
me.
soda.
You're
You can have that
mischaracterizing me.
little plastic cup and get some water.
How much would an iPhone cost if we built it in the United States?
$1,000 million.
$1 million.
What do you think? They're like $700 now, right?
Well, first of all, we literally
That's the
don't
markup.
have the kind of factory, so you'd have to build the factory. You'd have to build this.
6 months?
So it would cost billions of dollars to build one of those super high-tech factories.
that's too much money.
Then on top of that, you would have to hire people.
And he falls asleep.
That's too
You'd have to
much.
hire
You're
people,
right.
a substantial wage, but it could be done. It's not an impossible thing. It was done in China. It could be done over here.
They can make
but it would
iPhones
cost
here.
more. It would definitely cost
Well,
more.
just use Mexicans.
Wait, listen
The
to this.
price would go up.
But don't you think the country should subsidize fucking iPhones instead of corn? Because all these cunts are putting corn in everything, and corn syrup and this and that, and everybody's getting fat as fuck, and people are dying of heart attacks.
Hey,
It's
dude.
goddamn corn protein
Hey,
and
motherfucker.
corn powder. Can I just talk for a second? That'll be okay. All this corn in
button.
everything. Jesus Christ. Maybe we subsidize cell phones
Talk
because you
to the
need that
lobbies.
more than you need fucking corn.
Talk to Archer Daniel Midland's lobbying efforts.
It'd
They're
just be
very
too
strong.
expensive.
They
They'll
get
just
people
talk to me
elected.
about slaves and how good they are. How important it is. to
I'm
have-
pro-slavery, motherfucker. It's a free country. I can say what I want.